Welcome back to Year 12 Global Politics. Today we will be looking at the national interest of regional relationships. What this video will cover is what is regional relationships, as in what is that national interest in relation to our study design. I will give you some examples of regional relationships, talking about like positive regional relationships and then negative regional relationships, as well as factors that shape that national interest, which is essentially why a country does that. Throughout this video, the examples I will present are on China, so hopefully that will help some of you. In terms of the key knowledge for this area of study, you need to know the factors that shape that national interest, as well as the effectiveness of the state in achieving that national interest. So that's essentially how it's been positive and then how it has been negative. So you will need to be able to evaluate it. What's different about regional relationships, though, in this course is that you can only have examples that relate to the Asia Pacific region. So the study design is very clear about what countries they believe are in the Asia Pacific. So you can see here, this is all just from the study design. They've got Pacific Rim states, Pacific Island states, and then others. Any of those countries could be classified as being part of the regional relationship. The ones outside of that could be used for international standing. So if you've got a question about regional relationships, you would need to specifically be talking about these countries listed. Examples, I think outside of that wouldn't, other countries, they wouldn't be classified as a regional relationship. So in the study design, it also, in our glossary, it actually states what they think a regional relationship is. So it says positive regional relationships are an important national interest to a state as they ensure that they will not behave in a hostile manner and thus threaten state sovereignty. Alliances with other like-minded neighbours may help the success of other national interests. So with China in mind, they have neighbours who may help them achieve what they want. Neighbours for China and neighbours that have positive relationships with China include countries like Cambodia, Myanmar, as well as Russia. They are good friends and they have made some positive regional relationships. But we also need to think about how a state doesn't achieve regional relationships. So it says here, however, a state may consider other national interests more important than positive regional relationships if they better achieve the aims of the state. So for China, they may find that, achieving national security or economic prosperity is more important than their regional relationships. And we've seen this in the South China Sea, where they have upset some of their neighbours, such as the Philippines, Vietnam, the Philippines and Vietnam, and also Malaysia. So, and the US, sorry, and the US and even Australia with our trade war. So there are quite a few countries here where, China, we could use as China not having a solid regional relationship. So let's get into some positive examples. I think a good example of positive relationship is between China and Cambodia. So they have a positive relationship because of China's investment and their aid. China is considered by Cambodia their most trusted friend. They've provided billions of dollars worth of aid, $5.27 billion in aid between 2001 and 2019. They are the biggest trade partner China is Cambodia's biggest trade partner. They have invested $1.5 billion in Cambodia and make up 70% of foreign direct investment. China has also funded a number of language schools in Cambodia and has a lot of immigration for the Chinese workers to Cambodia. So they have quite a positive relationship. The Foreign Minister, Gareth Evans, has described the relationship by saying that Cambodia is wholly owned subsidiary of China. So really, I think that shows that there is a large amount of investment and a large amount of large amount happening between China and Cambodia. Um, we've seen this positive relationship also go further because of the large amount of trade and aid that Cambodia receive from China. They arranged for the South China Sea issue to be dropped at the ASEAN summit in 2012 and the ICJ ruling to be removed from the ASEAN meeting in 2016. So this positive regional relationship has helped China in other ways. In terms of why they actually have a positive relationship, it's because of their history. China supported the Khmer Rouge in Cambodia in 1975, and Cambodia also more recently was one of the 53 countries that backed the Hong Kong national security law. And there's also been some benefits between China and Cambodia for, mutual benefits for both of them. So their history is why they have a positive relationship, and they have continued to foster that relationship with trade and aid. But we need to look at negative relationships. We need to look at, what China has done poorly with their regional relationships. And there's quite a few you could bring up, such as, the Australia and China trade war, the tariffs that China placed on Australia because of Australia asking for an independent inquiry into the outbreak of COVID-19, which resulted in many bans on Australian exports like barley, beef, lamb, wine, and so on. So we could obviously talk about that. You could talk about the US-China trade war, but the example I've got here is the South China Sea. So what we've seen here is specifically China has used their military power to threaten and attack other states who have entered this territory. This includes sinking a Vietnamese fishing vessel close to the Parcel Islands in April 2020. Other things have happened, such as they've been building island fortresses as part of their cabbage strategy. They have intimidated their neighbours. And because China does believe that this is their territory, and they've also passed legislation that says that it's acceptable to fire on Coast Guard, for their Coast Guard to fire on foreign vessels. So, they are perceiving this to be part of their territory. But it is undermining their peaceful presence in the region. It's undermining their positive relationships. The Philippines and China are now, have experienced now some hostilities. We've seen this through the Philippines telling China to get the F out in 2021, as well as the Philippines and the US also conducting joint war games in that area. So that there is showing hostility, that there is showing that they have hurt their relationship. China has hurt that relationship and now has a hostile neighbor. But factors that shape this, China sees their rise and their use of force in this area as a concept as history as destiny. They believe that they have a right in this region because they were once a powerful, respected, and peaceful global actor. And so them carrying out these actions is just them resuming their rightful role. And they do believe also that countries like the US that tell them not to do these sorts of things in the South China Sea takes them back to this century of humiliation, which is a period where China was carved up by foreign powers and semi-colonized. This is a huge source of humiliation for people in China. So they do believe that countries telling them what not to do is part of that, and they don't want to return to that period of time. So China doesn't see their behavior in this region and in these examples as being aggressive. They see it that it's them resuming and going back to that rightful role that they once had. So we have now gone through what is a regional relationship, gone through some examples of positive and negative ones, as well as factors, which is essentially why China is doing that. I hope that was helpful. The last video will talk about international standing. See you later.